Almighty God, we give thanks to you, the creator of the universe, and humbly beseech you to direct and prosper the deliberations of the members of this house here assembled for the advancement of your glory and the trust and welfare of the people of Trinidad and Tobago. Grant that peace and happiness, truth and justice may be established among us for all generations. Amen, Amen, Namaste.
Oath or affirmation, announcements by the Speaker.
Honourable members, Mr. Prakash Ramada, MP, member for St. Augustine, Mr. Rodney Charles, MP, member for Naparima, and Mr. Maxi Coffey, MP, member for La Hoqueta Talparu, have requested leave of absence from today's sitting of the House. The leave which the members seek is granted. Honourable members, I have received correspondence from the Presidents of the Senate dated January 29, 2018. Dear Honourable Speaker, Establishment of the Joint Select Committee. Your letter dated January 29, 2018 on the subject at caption refers. I wish to advise that at a sitting held on Tuesday, January 30, 2018, the Senate concurred with the House in the establishment of a Joint Select Committee to consider and report on the Anti-Terrorism Amendment Bill 2018, and the following 6 members were appointed to serve on the committee: Mr. Clarence Rambarat, Mr. Nigel Lefreitas, Mr. Foster Cummins, Mr. Saddam Hussein, Ms. Sophia Choate, S.E., and Mr. Stephen Crease. Accordingly, I respectfully request that the House of Representatives be informed of this decision at the earliest convenience, please. Respectfully, Senator the Honourable Christine Kangaloo, President of the Senate.
Bills brought from the Senate, petitions, papers.
Minister of Finance.
Madam Speaker, I have the honor to lay the following papers. 1. The audited financial statements of the Trinidad and Tobago International Financial Center Management Company Limited for the year ended September 30th, 2017. 2. The annual report and audited financial statements of the Trinidad and Tobago Heritage and Stabilization Fund for the year ended September 30th, 2017. 3. The annual report of First Citizens Investment Services Limited and its subsidiaries for the year 2017. I beg to move that paper 1 be referred to the Public Accounts Enterprises Committee and paper 2 be referred to the Public Accounts Committee.
Honourable members, the question is that paper 1 be referred to the Public Accounts Enterprises Committee and paper 2 be referred to the Public Accounts Committee. All in favor say aye. Aye. Any against? The ayes have it. Leader of the House.
Thank you very kindly, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I have the honor to lay the following paper. Paper number 4, the ministerial response of the Ministry of Finance to the 9th report of the Public Accounts Enterprises Committee on the examination of the audited financial statements of the Telecommunications Services of Trinidad and Tobago Limited for the financial years 2008 to 2016. Thank you very kindly, Madam Speaker.
The Deputy Speaker.
Madam Speaker, I have the honor to lay paper number 5, the 40th annual report of the Ombudsman for the period January to December 2017. Thank you.
Leader of the House.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I have the honor to lay the following paper, paper number 5, the 40th annual report of the Ombudsman for the period January to December 2017. Thank you very kindly, Madam Speaker. And Madam Speaker, may I at the same time lay the notification of His Excellency, the President, in respect of the nomination of Mr. Deodat, Dulalchan for the appointment to the Office of Commissioner of Police. The notification of His Excellency, the President, in respect of the nomination of Mr. Deodat, Dulalchan for appointment to the Office of Deputy Commissioner of Police. And the notification of His Excellency, the President, in respect of the nomination of Mr. Harold Phillip for appointment to the Office of Deputy Commissioner of Police. Thank you very kindly, Madam Speaker.
Member for Diego Martin, Central.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I have the honor to present the 6th report of the Joint Select Committee on Local Authorities, Service Commissions, and Statutory Authorities, including the THA, on an inquiry into the efficiency and effectiveness of the Teaching Service Commission.
Member for Karen East.
Madam Speaker, I have the honor to present the following reports. The 10th report of the Public Accounts Enterprise Committee on the examination of the audited accounts, balance sheets, and other financial statements of the National Entrepreneurship Development Company Limited, NEDCO, for the financial years 2008 to 2014. Also, Madam Speaker, the 11th report of the Public Accounts Enterprise Committee on the examination of the audited accounts, balance sheets, and other financial statements of the National Maintenance, Training, and Security Company, MTS Limited, for the financial years 2008 to 2016. Thank you.
Prime Minister's questions, urgent questions.
Member for Point-a-Pear.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. To the Minister of Education. In light of the faulty sewer, which forced the school to be closed since January 15, 2018, could the Minister state how soon classes will resume for 221 students at the Mount Pleasant Government Primary School, Claxton Bay?
Minister of Education.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, the Education Facilities Company Limited has visited the Mount Pleasant Government Primary School in light of the faulty sewer system which forced school to be closed from January 15th. EFCL is currently preparing a scope of works for both a short-term and long-term solution to the problem. The short-term solution involves the use of plastic septic tanks and a filtration system which can be completed in approximately 1 week and will be implemented as soon as the Ministry of Education receives the scope of works. At present, Standard 4 and 5 classes have been accommodated at the nearby Presbyterian School. Thank you very much.
Supplemental, member for Point-a-Pear.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. To the Minister. Could he give a more specific deadline when the school will resume, please?
Minister of Education.
Madam Speaker, I just indicated that the first plan is to have that done in 1 week's time. As soon as we receive the scope of works from AFCL, we'll implement that plan, and that should not take more than 1 week. Thank you very much.
Member for Couva South.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. To the Minister of Energy and Energy Affairs, could the Minister inform this House when the National Gas Company will restore its supply of natural gas to Caribbean Nitrogen Company Limited.
Minister of Energy and Energy Industries.
Thank you very much for the correct expression of my portfolio. Madam Speaker, as is known, on January 24th, because of a breakdown of the negotiations for a gas sales agreement, the CNC company ceased its operation. Since January 24th, both the NGC and the government of Trinidad and Tobago, through the Ministry of Energy, have indicated to CNC that they should return to the negotiating table. Despite their various public utterances over the last 10 days, it is only today that the NGC received official correspondence from CNC that they are willing to resume negotiations. In that context, Madam Speaker, operations of CNC will obviously resume when an amicable settlement to the gas sales agreement is reached.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Could the Minister indicate to this House how much revenue has been lost by the National Gas Company as a result of this impasse?
Member, I will not allow that question as a supplemental question. Member for Couva South. Question number 3.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. To the Minister of National Security, given that Trinidad and Tobago recorded its 6th earthquake in a week and within recent times even more, could the Minister inform the citizens of the status of a national earthquake plan?
Minister of National Security.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, the earthquake plan for Trinidad and Tobago, which is a living document, has been developed and exercised by first responder agencies, inclusive of the Ministry of Rural Development and Local Government, as well as Tobago Emergency Management Agency. In keeping with standard operating procedures, agencies are on constant vigilance and alert based on information received from the Seismic Research Center of the University of the West Indies. Madam Speaker, the Ministry of National Security, through the ODPM, has been asking agencies to update their emergency plans for such an event. The public education campaigns by both the Seismic Research Center and the ODPM continues along with Ministry of Rural Development and Local Government. The ODPM, which has responsibility to coordinate on all of government and community national response, has been monitoring and preparing for such events. In addition, Madam Speaker, the ODPM has a sizable amount of relief supplies to mount an immediate response if needed.
Member for Couva South.
Madam Speaker, given the ODPM's track record as it relates to dealing with flooding in Trinidad and Tobago, could the Minister advise us of how many vacancies are existing at the Office of the Disaster Preparedness and Management Agency, and also of the expertise of people within that body as it relates to dealing with disaster from the point of view of earthquake and management?
Okay, member, I think you asked 2 questions there. In any event, I don't allow them as supplement, either of them a supplemental question. Member for Princestown.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, through you to the Honourable Minister of Community Development, Culture and the Arts, could the Minister indicate whether regional bodies have been provided with funding for Regional Carnival 2018? And if so, could the Minister provide a breakdown per region?
Minister of Community Development, Culture and the Arts.
Thank you very kindly, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, regional bodies have been provided with funding for Carnival 2018. The information coming from the NCC does not break down per region, it breaks down per committee, and that can be provided if the member so wishes.
Supplemental, member for Princestown.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, to the Honourable Minister, could you indicate what process is used to determine the amounts allocated per region to account for any disparity?
Okay. So, member, I think you may need to, if I'll allow you a supplemental, but you may have to rephrase your question in light of what was answered by the Minister.
Thank you, Madam. Madam, to the Honourable Minister, could the Honourable Minister indicate what process is used to determine the amounts allocated to each region?
Okay. Minister of Community Development, Culture and the Arts.
Madam Speaker, that is a question that deals with the process. I was asked to supply if funding was supplied, and I've answered that one. If the member has more concerns about the process, I feel that would be a different question.
Well said. Any? A further supplemental? Number 5, member for Princestown.
Thank you, Madam. Madam Speaker, to the Honourable Minister of National Security, in light of the recent announcement of the establishment of 6 security zones, each to be set up in the nation's capital for Carnival 2018 and managed by an Assistant Commissioner of Police, could the Minister indicate what specific measures will be used in the other areas outside the capital city that will be hosting Carnival events?
Minister of National Security.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, while the announcement referred to the 6 zones, in particular addressing Port of Spain, Carnival throughout Trinidad and Tobago will be addressed with respect to security by the members of the law enforcement community and the defense and security services. Madam Speaker, Trinidad and Tobago is in fact divided up into its 9 divisions and also inclusive of traffic branches spread across Trinidad and Tobago. Madam Speaker, Carnival celebrations, major Carnival celebrations throughout Trinidad and Tobago includes Port of Spain, Southern, which refers to San Fernando, Princestown, Marabella, Gasparilla, Moruga. In Central, Chaguanas, Carpichaima, and Couva. Tobago, Scarborough, Crown Point, and Roxborough. Eastern, Sandy Grande, Mayaro, Manzanillo, Toco, Valencia, Matura. In Northern, St. Joseph, Tunapuna, Arima, Aruca. Southwestern, Faizabad, Pinal, Siparia, Santa Flora, Cedras. Northeastern, Samoa and Santa Cruz, and Western, Maraval and St. James. Madam Speaker, throughout wherever there are Carnival celebration, in addition, security throughout Trinidad and Tobago will be addressed by members of the law enforcement community and defense and security services.
Supplemental member for Princestown.
Thank you, Madam. Madam, to the Honourable Minister of National Security, with less than 2 weeks before Carnival 2018, could the Minister indicate whether increased joint army and police patrols will be utilized, and if so, how many army and police officers are expected to be on the streets for the nation's Carnival?
Minister of National Security.
Madam Speaker, throughout the length and breadth of Trinidad and Tobago, wherever there are Carnival activities, and in addition to the security of Trinidad and Tobago as a whole, there will be joint exercises and joint presence of members of the law enforcement community through the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service and members of the Defense Force throughout the length and breadth, both on land and on sea, Madam Speaker, to ensure that revelers and those visitors who are visiting Trinidad and Tobago enjoy the safety and security of Trinidad and Tobago.
Thank you, Madam. Madam, the Honourable Minister did not answer the question. The question is, how many officers do we expect to be deployed during the nation's Carnival on land?
Minister of National Security.
Madam Speaker, members of the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service and members of the Defense Force will be employed throughout the length and breadth of Trinidad and Tobago to ensure the safety and security of Trinidad and Tobago.
Okay, so members, while I understand that the arena allows a certain amount of banter, certain comments have reached my ear, which I hope won't be repeated. Okay.
Questions on notice, questions for oral answer.
Leader of the House.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, there are 3 questions for oral answer. We will be answering all 3. There are 2 questions for written answer, and we'll be answering both. The clerk has the written answers for circulation.
Member for Chaguanas East.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Question number 73 to the Minister of Trade and Industry.
Minister of Trade and Industry.
Who is that? A good answer.
There is no.
Leader of the House. Question number 73.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, answering on behalf of the Minister of Trade and Industry. The e-commerce strategy outlines the government's framework for the development of e-commerce in Trinidad and Tobago over the next 3 years. The government's role under the strategy is to ensure that businesses and consumers have the necessary tools and resources to derive tangible benefits from e-commerce, as well as the legal and regulatory frameworks that foster business and consumer confidence in the establishment of a larger digital economy. Initiatives aimed at equipping citizens to transact business online, as well as fostering business and consumer confidence in e-commerce are: 1, the Ministry of Trade and Industry will develop and promote private sector participation in e-commerce through its agencies such as Export TT and the Exim Bank, and in collaboration with other ministries. This will seek to increase awareness about e-commerce and encourage domestic firms to actively participate in online by buying and selling goods and services, as well as acquiring market information, developing business networks, and goods and services promotion. The government will also collaborate with the TTMA, the TTCIC, AmCham, and the IDB and other similar organizations to encourage firms to have a full online presence on Connect Americas and other similar platforms. This is an ideal way in which local manufacturers and service providers can easily reach markets and entrepreneurs worldwide, and from the government's perspective, an effective means to bring firms online with minimal outlay. The Consumer Affairs Division under the Ministry of Trade and Industry is currently implementing educational programs such as public meetings and lectures to consumers and suppliers about unfair trade practices and unfair contract terms and the like. The Consumer Affairs Division is also using media advertising campaigns on e-commerce issues, telemarketing, and also consumer risks, such as scams and fraud. Consumer tips via print, electronic, and social media. This is being done at the community and national levels with the assistance of various stakeholders. These programs will commence in the first quarter of 2018 and will continue for 2 years. During this time, the programs will be evaluated to determine whether an impact is being made. It should be noted that the current National ICT Plan, fast forward to Trinidad and Tobago's National ICT Plan 2017 to 2021, which was recently approved by Cabinet, has as one of its main strategic thrusts increasing human capacity, enhancing digital literacy, and developing the skills to enable productivity and innovation. This involves a focus on enhancing digital literacy and developing the skills to enable productivity and innovation with an e-ready society, as well as empowering citizens with ICT skills and competencies and growing awareness of ICT for doing things better, doing things differently, and doing new things, all with the view of increasing productivity, creating new lifestyles, and driving success in all forms of enterprise. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Supplemental member for Shogunas East.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. Will the Honourable Minister indicate whether, given the multitude of initiatives, whether the Ministry is adequately resourced with the human capacity, technical and financial resources?
Leader of the House.
Thank you very kindly, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, as this is one of the areas that the Ministry is very interested in ensuring is successful, and also because of the fact that this is one of the areas that is one of the pillars of the Vision 2030 for the government of Trinidad and Tobago, and it is part of the policy of the government. Yes, the Ministry is moving to ensure that it is adequately resourced, and we are in the position to give the assurance that that is being pursued adequately and relentlessly, because this is an area of great importance for the government of Trinidad and Tobago. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Supplemental question, member for Barataria-San Juan.
Thank you. Member for Aruka Moroni, could you indicate, if at all, there will be the development of merchant accounts in Trinidad and Tobago where online payments worldwide could be accepted?
Leader of the House.
Madam Speaker, once that is part of the development that needs to take place for Trinidad and Tobago to play its role in the developing economy, that will be one of the areas that we will implement.
Member for Chaguanas East.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Question number 74 to the Minister of National Security.
Minister of National Security.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, the responsibility to send out notices to the general public regarding traffic disruptions does not fall under the jurisdiction of the Ministry of National Security, but the Ministry of Works and Transport. In this regard, the Ministry's communication unit is charged with the dissemination of traffic advisories to external stakeholders. Nevertheless, Madam Speaker, and in keeping with the whole of government approach to governance, the Minister of National Security acknowledges its critical role in coordination of efforts, more specifically through its agencies, the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service and the Office of Disaster Preparedness and Management. With respect to planned traffic disruptions, the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service informs the public via its official Facebook page. Additionally, information received from external agencies, inclusive of the Ministry of Works and Transport, once verified, is usually published on the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service Facebook and Twitter pages, often in the form of a web link which lead users to the source or website of the entity that generated the information. Likewise, Madam Speaker, the ODPM, as the country's strategic disaster risk reduction and management agency, has a specific responsibility to mobilize and coordinate the country's key agencies in responding to any hazard impact. These agencies include the Trinidad and Tobago Defense Force, Trinidad and Tobago Police Service, Trinidad and Tobago Fire Service, municipal and regional corporations, government ministries, the private sector, NGOs and FBOs, and other key stakeholders. However, it should be noted that a disturbance that causes disruption to the smooth flow of traffic in any part of the country may or may not qualify as a hazard. Nonetheless, Madam Speaker, ODPM utilizes social media to inform citizens of incident occurrences, provide safety information and public advisories, inclusive posting of bulletins and notifications for other early warning agencies, share hazard information and general information to the public. Madam Speaker.
Supplemental question, member for Chaguanas East.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. Honourable Minister, are you satisfied that, given the consequences of the disruption of traffic flows and productivity and on safety and security, are you satisfied of the effectiveness of these mechanisms under your ministry to deal with this situation?
Minister of National Security.
Madam Speaker, like all processes, there's always room for improvement, and we continue to monitor and improve where necessary.
Member for Chaguanas East.
Thank you very much. Honourable Minister, can you indicate to this House what are the additional mechanisms you're using to improve the traffic flows?
Minister of National Security.
Madam Speaker, utilizing the interagency approach with coordination between Trinidad and Tobago Police Service, Office of Disaster Preparedness and Management, Ministry of Works and Transport, and other agencies in the Ministry of National Security to ensure any disruption is dealt with in a speedily manner.
Member for Chaguanas East.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. Questions number 75 to the Minister of Finance.
Minister of Finance.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Following the presentation of the 2018 budget, a number of fiscal measures were implemented aimed at reducing the demand for motor vehicle imports and the associated demand for foreign exchange. These measures included increasing by 25% the motor vehicle tax and customs duty on all private passenger vehicles with engine sizes exceeding 1599 cc's, but not exceeding 1999 cc's. In addition, customs duty, motor vehicle tax, and value-added tax were reintroduced on hybrid vehicles with engine sizes exceeding 1599 cc's. It should be noted that previously, in 2016, this demand reduction strategy was initiated by increasing by 50% taxes on private passenger vehicles with engine sizes exceeding 1999 cc's.
Question, Member for Chaguanas East.
Madam Speaker, will the Honourable Minister indicate with respect to those measures you have taken, what do you project to be the reduction in terms of the number of vehicles and therefore the outflow of foreign exchange, if you have?
Minister of Finance.
Madam Speaker, it's too early to tell, but based on preliminary reports from the Customs and Excise Division, the imports of motor vehicles are on the way down. But it's too early on the way down. But it's too early to give actual figures.
Request for leave to move the adjournment of the House on definite matters of urgent public importance.
Member for Barataria-Sanwan.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I wish to raise a definite matter of urgent public importance concerning the hardships faced by the students of the San Juan Boys Government Primary School who have been placed at a temporary location in Tunapuna. The substantial school construction began in 2013. However, at present, it now consists of a dilapidated, unfinished building, leaking roof, termite-infested benches, non-functioning toilets, no water, vagrants, drug addicts, and homeless persons occupying both the shed as well as the unfinished school building. The matter is definite because it speaks to the need of young students experiencing hardships as a result of the Ministry of Education's incompetence in providing a proper school habitat. The matter is urgent because this problem has been ongoing for approximately 4 years. The matter is of public importance because the continued utilization of the temporary surroundings as well as the dilapidated conditions of the present school surroundings can result in severe leptospirosis due to rat infestations and its intended consequences.
Honourable members, I am not satisfied that this matter qualifies under this standing order. I advise that the member pursues this matter under Standing Order 16. Member for Princestown.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, for the opportunity to raise a matter of urgent, definite importance in the constituency of Princestown. Madam Speaker, in accordance with Standing Order 17 of the House of Representatives, I hereby seek your leave to move the adjournment of the House at today's sitting of the House for the purpose of discussing a definite matter of urgent public importance, namely the closure and demolition of the Princestown Presbyterian No. 1 Primary School for the past 2 years. The matter is definite because it pertains to the current situation faced by students, parents, and staff who are facing severe hardship, inconvenience, and health hazards by being on a shift system with the Princestown Presbyterian No. 2 Primary School since the closure of the No. 1 Primary School over 2 years ago. Madam, it is urgent because the risk to the safety and health of the students and staff has been exacerbated over the past 2 weeks since they are now constrained to sit on the floor and shelter from the elements in the cafeteria area on their arrival to facilitate the intervals between shifts, resulting in several students falling ill. Since this recent practice has been adopted due to holding areas now being used as additional teaching facilities. The poor sanitation and exposure to the elements is a direct result of the severe overcrowding and insufficient accommodation for 2 school populations to be sharing one facility from 7 a.m. to 5 p.m. And it is of public importance because if this situation is allowed to continue, it will lead to the academic performance, health, and well-being of the students being further compromised that can result in increased negative effects on the students, parents, and staff of the Princestown Presbyterian No. 1 Primary School. Thank you, Madam.
Honorable members, I am not satisfied that this qualifies under this standing order. I advise that the member pursues this matter under Standing Order 16.
Statements by ministers, personal explanations, introduction of bills, motions relating to the business or sittings of the House and moved by a minister, public business, government business, motions.
Member for Diego Martin, Northeast.
Madam Speaker, I beg to move the following motion standing in my name. Be it resolved. Oh, that's what I'm saying. Can't be that.
Prime Minister.
Madam Speaker, I beg to move the following motion. Whereas Section 123, Section 3 of the Constitution of Trinidad and Tobago, Chapter 101, provides that the Police Service Commission shall submit to the President a list of names of the persons nominated for appointment to the office of Commissioner or Deputy Commissioner of Police. And whereas Section 123, subsection 4 of the Act provides that the President shall issue a notification in respect of each person nominated under subsection 3, and the notification shall be subject to affirmative resolution of the House of Representatives. And whereas the Police Service Commission has submitted to the President the name Mr. Deodat Dulalchan as the person nominated for appointment to the office of Commissioner of Police. And whereas the President has on the 26th of January 2018 issued a notification in respect of the nomination, and whereas it is expedient to approve the nomination, the notification, be it resolved that the notification of the President of the nomination by the Police Service Commission of Mr. Deodat Dulalchan to the Office of Commissioner of Police be approved. Madam Speaker, it is with a certain amount of anticipation and expectation that the population received this information in recent weeks, or I should say days, because, Madam Speaker, we have been waiting for this opportunity to close this matter for approximately 5 years. The last time there was a substantive officer in the post of police commissioner was at the time when we had the Canadian Dr. Dwayne Gibbs. 2012. That was 2012. And since then, since the conclusion of those contracts prematurely, a vacancy existed for the Commissioner of Police. And Madam Speaker, if there is any development that indicates the dysfunctionality in certain aspects of the governance of this republic, this particular matter highlights such dysfunctionality. Because we have been captured by a process which required all kinds of interpretations. From where I came from, Madam Speaker, as opposition leader, where I've expressed on many occasions that this process is unacceptable and that it will amount to no good, I recommended then that we do away with it and offered support for a change. on becoming Prime Minister of Trinidad and Tobago and try to accelerate the process, the first hurdles I discovered in the process was that there appeared to be nobody really responsible for it. And as you try to push this stone up the hill, monumental excuses appeared. It wasn't the Prime Minister's office, it wasn't the DPA, it wasn't the Commission, it wasn't the Commissioner. The end result is, Madam Speaker, that the process took a very long time to get to where we are today. It has also been a very expensive exercise, but the population expected that having got to where we are with what I just read out, that we would comfortably move into someone occupying the position as the Commissioner and put an end to this situation of us not having in post an officer so appointed. In the meantime, we've had the situation of acting appointments, and a lot has been said about that. I need not repeat. But it had the effect of contributing to the underperformance of the police service. Madam Speaker, I simply want to repeat that it is not in dispute that the agency of the state that is responsible for policing the state under law is the police service. There's no other agency that is so authorized to carry out law enforcement in Trinidad and Tobago than the police service. And therefore, every citizen has an interest in the effective functioning of the police service. So when we get to the point of wanting to appoint a commissioner and deputy commissioners of the service, every citizen has an interest, Madam Speaker. Today, it is with great disappointment that I have to ask this House to acknowledge that we are not in a position, Madam Speaker, to conclude this process to the satisfaction of the wider national community. One of the problems that the current police service faces is a lack of confidence in the service, an absence of trust between the service and the population. And it was our anticipation that with the coming of a commissioner of police, that these two impediments would have been addressed in some small measure to begin to build a new tomorrow in Trinidad and Tobago and to restore into our community a police service whose leadership is beyond reproach. Madam Speaker, suffice it to say that as Prime Minister, I, like the man in the street in Cuba, Cedros or Scarborough, had to rely on what was published as speculation or inside information in the newspaper or on the television, because the process allows me and my team, government, no insight or involvement in this process. So when the process is closed and it appears for the first time before me today in this way, as against the background of all that has been said and all the disquiet that exists now in the population about the process for this House to proceed without answers to the questions that have been raised, is for the House to proceed without appropriate information that is required for the House to act appropriately, and for that trust, Madam Speaker, to be based on a foundation of comfort that all is well in the state of Trinidad and Tobago. Madam Speaker, I have seen it said that my colleagues on the other side have certain recommendations as to how we should proceed. I have no argument with those recommendations, whichever. But I simply want to say, Madam Speaker, that we are required under law to move forward with this process, which has come through a number of hoops, over a number of hills, come to us in this House to select a commissioner of police in a time where the streets of Trinidad and Tobago are killing fields and the police service is in dire need of revolutionary leadership. Madam Speaker, in order to allow this House to make that decision in a way that would satisfy the population, it is my view that the House needs assistance. Assistance to have questions answered before the House proceeds any further. And it's on that basis, Madam Speaker, that I recommend to my colleagues in this House that we revert to Section 53 of the Standing Orders so that the House can be assisted.
Leader of the House.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, in accordance with Standing Order 50 sub 3, not 50 sub 3, I beg to move that this debate be adjourned to a later date to enable a special select committee to obtain further information that may be necessary in accordance with what was suggested by the member for Digger Martin West, to obtain further information necessary to assist us in proceeding with this debate. Madam Speaker, I beg to move.
Madam Speaker.
Point of order.
Standing Order 39, dispensing with notice.
Honourable Member, in terms of your objection, it is overruled. I'm now going to. Honourable members, the question is that this debate be adjourned to a later date. Those in favour say aye. Aye. Those against say no. I think the ayes have it. Leader of the House.
Madam Speaker, in accordance with Standing Order 38(1)L, I beg to move that a special select committee of the House be established with powers as set out in Standing Order 111 for the purpose of obtaining additional and particular information to enable the House of Representatives to consider the notification submitted to it by His Excellency the President pursuant to Section 123 of the Constitution. And Madam Speaker, I would like to indicate, in addition to the powers as outlined in Standing Order 111, that it be resolved that this committee be mandated to obtain information, documentation, and/or evidence relevant to and/or touching and concerning the method, process, criteria, and considerations utilized by the Police Service Commission and/or the firm employed by the Police Service Commission in the selection of candidates for the position of Commissioner of Police and Deputy Commissioner of Police, to enable the House of Representatives to consider the notification submitted to it by His Excellency the President pursuant to Section 123 of the Constitution, and that this Select Committee of the House report by March 31st, 2018. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Honourable members, the question is that a special select committee of the House be established for the purpose of obtaining additional and particular information to enable the House of Representatives to consider the notifications submitted to it by His Excellency the President pursuant to Section 123 of the Constitution, and be it resolved that this committee be mandated to A, obtain information, documentation, and/or evidence relevant to and/or touching and concerning the method, process, criterion, and considerations utilized by the Police Service Commission and/or the firm employed by the Police Service Commission in the selection of candidates for the position of Commissioner of Police and Deputy Commissioner of Police, to enable the House of Representatives to consider the notifications submitted to it by His Excellency, the President, pursuant to Section 123 of the Constitution, and report by March 31st, 2018. Member for Siparia.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I'm sorry I do not have sight of the motion, so I'll have to rely on what you just read. We will pass a copy of what... Sorry.
The motion was passed to the the member for point of pair, and it is exactly the motion that I have put. So you do have sight of it.
Madam, what I have sight of is something that says A, obtain information, documentation, and or evidence, etc. B, report by. Thank you. Thank you. So that's right. We don't have the resolution. So what is before the Parliament, as moved by the Honourable Member and Leader of the House, Member for Ruka Maloney, the question that has been put is, be resolved that a special select committee of the House be established for the purpose of obtaining additional and particular information to enable the House of Representatives to consider the notifications submitted to it by His Excellency the President pursuant to Section 123 of the Constitution. Madam Speaker, the Honourable Member has given very little reason as to why this is to be done. Indeed, the Honourable Prime Minister previously started debate on the motion to approve the notification from the President and spoke of several extraneous matters. Now, this may be a very good strategy to constrain debate on this particular motion. But, Madam Speaker, we do see merit in having a special select committee set up. And this is because the office of the Commissioner of Police is one of the most important offices in the country when it comes to our democracy and the enforcement of law and order. And this very important office, Madam Speaker, has, let the opposition have its say, the government will always have its way, Madam Speaker. This is a very important motion, and the process that will ensue thereafter is also very important. So that why is it that we will support having a joint select committee, madam? Why? A special, my apologies. Why would we go under standing order to have a special select committee established? Now, it is not very important, it's not very often this has happened in this Parliament to the best of my memory. We have had many JSCs, but very few, if any, special select committees. And it is important, and it is something that we will support, given that the office is so important, given that this office is really a very integral part of the, a very integral part of our democracy. And from the time our independent constitutions came into being, there was given that special insulation to a particular autonomous independent body to appoint a commissioner and a deputy commissioner. The constitutional provisions are very clear. And then those provisions were sort of interpreted and amplified in many decisions coming from on top on the Privy Council level and through our own courts. Indeed, recently, in the case of Harinat Maraj and the Attorney General, where we had cause to take the legal notice of 2015, the order for the selection process, several parts of that order were struck down as unconstitutional, as being in some ways interfering with the independence of the Police Service Commission. In 2007, this Parliament, well, not this particular Parliament, but the Parliament then in 2007, changed the Constitution. And that makes that office even so much more important, because previously to 2007, the Police Service Commission had a lot of powers to appoint, to promote, to transfer, to discipline, and so on. Those powers were taken away and given to whom? The Commissioner of Police. And the Police Service Commission remained only with two officers, the two top officers, with respect to appointments, transfer, and so on, discipline. And therefore, given the plenitude of powers of a Commissioner of Police, it is imperative that the process that was engaged in to arrive at any nomination coming before us, and for us to approve, that that process must have been transparent, it must have been fair, and it must be such as to preclude any taint of interference. That is what the law provides, and that is why this Joint Select Committee now, the Select Committee on the 95, so I know the 95, is so vital. Because there have been all kinds of allegations in the public domain. And we know, Madam Speaker, the allegations about, I would not want to involve the chair, but the allegations about many of us in this Parliament, which are totally false. There are allegations coming about high offices, small offices, that are totally false. I mean, I read last night a headline in the newspaper. It said, PSC, Police Service Commission, to be interrogated today. Madam, not true, it couldn't happen. Because first you have to establish a committee and so on. So not everything that is in the public domain is true, but then it is not for us. It is not for us to judge the truth of whatever the allegations are. But what it is for us to do is to ensure, as I say, there was a transparent process, there was due process, and everything else that goes with it to get the best candidate as a Commissioner of Police with a plenitude of powers. And that is so vital, Madam Speaker. Because again, Privy Council rulers have told us, listen, if there is any hint or taint of any kind of interference, political or otherwise, if there's any flaw in the process by which this is done, there will be no trust and there's no confidence in the top office for Commissioner of Police. And so this is very important office, Madam Speaker. For us to determine issues of fact and law, this committee will be able to do it, this Select Committee, determine issues of fact. I mean, there are issues relating to a quorum. They're saying we're 3 people, not a quorum. When the Constitution is very clear, our own Constitution, so that's an issue of law that can be determined very easily by the committee, that in any service commission, this is section 129(2) of our Constitution, the supreme law of the land, at any meeting of a service commission, 3 members shall constitute a quorum. So again, I'm saying some issues of law, another lawyer may disagree and interpret this in a different way. I would interpret and say at any meeting of a service commission, 3 members shall constitute a quorum. And so all these issues, that is an issue of law, and there are issues of fact. There are issues of fact as to the process that took place, and that is why this Select Committee is going to be so vital. This Select Committee will help us to get information, documentation, evidence, touching and concerning, method, process. And this is where we are, Madam Speaker. When we go to a Select Committee, we can get all the information, documentation, anything touching and concerning the method, the criterion that is utilized by the Police Service Commission. So, whilst we take this, I would say, maybe unique step or unprecedented step, it is because we must ensure that the process, that there had been no compromise in the process. So here we are, the persons, a question of fact, I gave one of law. Persons are raising questions about whether they applied for the post or did not apply for the post. Did that really happen or not happen? And if it did happen, was it lawful? Was it intra-virus? The process that should have been followed. There are issues touching and concerning the quorum. I mentioned that before. Issues touching and concerning the Police Complaints Authority sending documentary evidence to the Service Commission. What was that? Did they send it to the Service Commission only for this process, or did they send documentary things about disciplinary charges being laid? Did they send it in 2011 when those things transpired, or 2012, or 13, or 14, or 15 years ago, or in 17? And was it properly sent? If you said to discipline, should it go to the Police Service Commission? The law is clear. If you're sending for discipline, I made a point in 2007, the law changed. So if you're saying discipline someone, disciplinary charges, what does the law tell us? You send it to whom? The police commissioner. Because discipline of all officers on the rank of commissioner and police commissioner. Again, I'm saying that is an issue of law. It's a question of law. And then, of course, there are all kinds of stories about one nominee being close to a member of the Service Commission. That raises a whole issue of bias, apparent bias, which, again, we have to see. We have to see what really happened, what transpired. Is this true? Is this not true? And if it is true, what steps were taken? And if it is not true, was any other nominee being considered? Was anybody else? Have there been disciplinary charges against anybody else? We must thank the media for exposing certain allegations. But are there any other nominees who may be similarly circumstanced with respect to reports going for disciplinary action, with reports going about, well, I know you, you know. I'm reading that one nominee, for example, has been, and this is where the select committee is going to help us. It's going to help us as to what process, what were the facts, what the issues were. So I'm reading, for example, that one nominee, as I said, was close to someone else because, you know what, he worked in the police service with this other nominee who is a policeman. Well, did he work with any other nominee or any other candidate? Because we've seen an expose with respect to two of the nominees. Two nominees. Thanks to the media, we've seen all these exposés. As I say, I do not take everything I read or see on the media, whilst grateful for raising the concerns, whether they are true or not. So here we go. A joint select committee. Select committee. We are so used to joint select, madam, I do apologize again. The select committee of the Parliament is the place where this Parliament, you know, and this is a really, I think it's a very positive thing to happen, because we would be really utilizing a very strong and powerful tool in the hands of parliamentarians when we go to the select committee. And this is why I had written to the Honourable Prime Minister when he sent me an email requesting a meeting to discuss this matter. I wrote to the Honourable Prime Minister, and I would like to put parts of this into the record because it justifies my support for having a select committee. I refer to the matter, this is the request by the Honourable Prime Minister for a meeting with the opposition about the Commissioner of Police. I've taken note of the reports and so on. The appointment of a Commissioner of Police is a matter of great and general public importance, not only to the opposition, but to each and every citizen of the Republic. Continuing. The public of Trinidad and Tobago will only repose trust and confidence in a Commissioner who had been appointed by a process that was fair, transparent, open, and subject to the highest degree of scrutiny. If the matters reported in the public domain are credible, I'm sure you will agree that the process employed to select the proposed nominees falls short of this standard. This has resulted in the trial of the proposed nominees in the court of public opinion, even before they are subjected to the process the law provides for their consideration by the Parliament, that is the ultimate decision maker. So we here, this House, and not the Senate. I was part of the discussions when the law was changed in 2007, as I think the member for Roodal Moonilal was also part of the committee for the government side at that time. And this was very clear. It was then requested by the Honourable Prime Minister and agreed to by the two sides that Honourable Prime Minister, late Prime Minister, may God rest his soul, Prime Minister Manning, that we should put in, this should be only dealt with, approved by, or say nay or nay, in the House, not in the Senate. And again, that issue of the parliamentary representation that the House was given, that seniority to deal with this. So just we'll stop here or go further from here. And so what is now awash in the public domain, the words used by Honourable Prime Minister, raises more questions than answers with respect to the process employed and the proposed nominees. And this is why, Madam Speaker, the Select Committee is the way to go. Whilst the opposition fully respects the independence of the Police Service Commission, I'm continuing, Madam, on the reasoning for this suggestion, and the requirement for ensuring it is insulated from political interference in the performance of its functions, the opposition is of the view that any meaningful dialogue between government and opposition in this matter in present circumstances can only be achieved if there is full disclosure to both government and opposition of details of the process that was employed by the Commission in selecting the proposed nominees. Madam Speaker, further, having carefully considered all that has transpired, I respectfully suggest that the public interest requires there be full disclosure by the Police Service Commission in this matter. And I see in the motion for the Select Committee that we'll be looking not only at the Police Service Commission, but also the firm that was contracted by this Police Service Commission as to their methods, their process, and so on. So I said a special Select Committee of the House should be established to expeditiously inquire into and report to the House on this matter. Such a committee will be empowered under the standing orders of the House to summon the Commission before it and secure disclosure of all relevant material that was considered by the Commission in arriving at its decision. And so, fixed timeline and so on for reporting. So, Madam Speaker, we are here today for this Select Committee to do exactly that. There are other areas and other issues that this Select Committee could help us clarify, whether they be issues of fact or whether they be issues of law. For example, can you apply for one post but, is it lawful? Can you apply for one post but then be offered another one? For example, where you have different qualifications, and we have the two legal notices from 2015, 218 and 219. One is the qualification criteria, and the other notice had to do with the selection process criteria. So where you have qualifications for Commissioner of Police, different for Deputy Commissioner of Police, how come you then pick up everybody applied or two applied for Commissioner of Police, if that is in fact true, and then say, hey, you know what? Are you interested in the Commissioner of Police? Can you do that? Is intra vires the remit, the powers, the jurisdiction of the Police Service Commission? Issues, again, that the Select Committee could help us, to deal with this issue that confronts us for us to be able to vote on it, yea or nay, has to do with the role and functions again. Are the functions and the roles of the Commissioner and the Deputy Commissioner the same? That you could pick one up and say, do this or do that. Again, why was that done? What was the process? And what is the law? What would be the issues of law when it comes to that? And then again, goalposts being shifted in process. So you say horses in midstream being changed and so on. The application form, we've seen them. They specifically ask, there are three positions, COP, Deputy Commissioner, or both. Is it that they applied for both? Some are saying in the allegations, no, they did not. They just applied for one. So that's the whole issue of what they applied for. Then now, because of the 2015 order that was made, several things changed. So a lot of things out there in the public domain in law are, in my respectful view, erroneous. So, for example, they're saying that the firm must give you a short list. The firm will give you a short list. You know, that part of the 2015 order was struck down by the courts of this land as being ultra vires, and therefore was removed, the part about the short list. So all these people now have to do, as based on the Service Commission, has to do. So is that true in law, that all they have to do, and all the firm has to do, legal? Yes, ma'am.
While I understand what you're doing, and I am allowing you, I want you to be careful that in here we're not doing what we established in the committee, or even trying to foreshadow to the committee what they should inquire into and what the result should be. Okay, so just be careful.
I am saying there are questions and there are concerns which this committee could help us, given the mandate, that they will obtain additional information to help us obtain documentation, evidence, and so on, to make sure that this process was transparent. And so, Madam, I'm saying the select committee is the only way to go, because that's the only place we can get this type of information. I'm just giving examples of information. If the Police Service Commission must do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, did the Police Commission do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, as contained in the Legal Notice 218, as contained in 219, I believe 219 has to do with the qualifications, 218, Legal Notice 218 has to do with the selection. But then did the Service Commission comply with the law? Is their decision in keeping with law, intra vires relevant pieces of law? That is how they should have operated. We don't know that, given the concerns out there. I'm saying, for example, the legal notice says, look, send me a list. And then we see someone say, well, you know what? We should take the list sent by the firm, and we must keep it in the same rank. But when you read the legal notice, again, a question of law. Did that happen? The legal notice says they send you a list. The court struck down short list. Just send a list of the person's assessed and so on. And then it is the Service Commission, and did they do that according to law? The Service Commission must then set up the order of merit list. So there's some confusion there, which I do believe the Select Committee, and therefore, Madam Speaker, to cut a long story short, we support the establishment of the Select Committee. Yeah, it's a long story short, we support you on this matter.
Member for Diego Martin, Northeast.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I thought it was necessary to respond to the contribution of the Leader of the Opposition to put this matter into some historical perspective. But first, Madam Speaker, for the benefit of the viewing public, may I just explain what Standing Order 50 sub 3 is, because persons may not understand what we have done. And 50 sub 3 deals with the adjournment of the debate in the House, which we have done. And therefore, what we have done is perfect.
Remember, just for some guidance, we are now to the motion under Standing Order 3811 for the appointment of a select committee of the House under Standing Order 95. So we've completed what has happened. Let's please be guided by what we are about. Thank you.
Most certainly, Madam Speaker. Just adding some clarity for the viewing public. Now, with respect to the matter raised by the member for, sorry, the matters raised by the Leader of the Opposition in her contribution, the problem we find ourselves in today, and the reason why the Honorable Prime Minister has introduced this motion, that this whole question of this notification be sent to a select committee, then properly put to the House by the Leader of Government Business, is the fact that in 2006, changes were made to the manner in which the Police Service Commission is selected and appointed, and changes were made with respect to the persons who had the authority to appoint, discipline, promote, and attend to matters of a similar nature with respect to the police service, Madam Speaker. So we are here today debating a motion introduced by the member for Aruka Maloney after an introduction by the Honorable Prime Minister. And it is necessary to understand why we have to send this matter to a select committee. In 2006, as I said, the procedure for the appointment of the Service Commission and the appointment of a police commissioner and deputy police commissioners Madam Speaker, please.
Member, I'm sure you are sufficiently senior that you could ignore that, address to me, and please proceed.
Madam, I am indeed very experienced, but that drone over there disturbs everyone. Thank you.
Member. Please, member. I think we've adopted a particular tone already, and I'd ask all members to let's keep in that tone. Member, please direct your contribution to me. I will conduct the business of the order. Continue.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. So in 2006, the then Prime Minister, because of the situation in the country in terms of dealing with the efficiency and effectiveness of the police and the incidents of crime at the time, there was a culmination of discussions between the opposition and the government of the day that led to the Police Service Act of 2006 and amendments to the Constitution, in particular 122A, 123A, 123B, and so on, Madam Speaker. The whole thing arose from a matter raised by the Honorable Prime Minister at the time, Mr. Manning, in 2004, Madam Speaker. It was a long time in coming. The genesis for the reason why a notification came to the Parliament today and the reason why we are asking for this matter to be considered.
Madam Speaker, standing order 48-1.
All right, so member, I am allowing you some leeway to develop what you're going to say. While I'm not yet certain that it is relevant, what I want to caution, though, is that I'm going to strictly enforce the rule against tedious repetition. So in response, I haven't heard anything as yet that has added anything different to what has already been said. So be careful. I am going to strictly enforce the rule against tedious repetition. I say that to all members. Please continue, the member for Diego Martin.
No problem, Madam Speaker. When the then Prime Minister wanted to reform the police service regulations, the police service legislation, it required a special majority, Madam Speaker. And I'm sure this House has not heard that it required a special majority. And it required the support of the then opposition, Madam Speaker, including the member for Siparia. And the then Prime Minister, Patrick Manning, deceased, approached the opposition to get the special majority required to reform the Constitution and to reform the manner in which a police commissioner is appointed. Prior to that, the Prime Minister had a veto. The Police Service Commission very quietly went about its business determining who, in its opinion, should be...
Speaker, 48-1.
This is going on.
I would really appreciate when a standing order, somebody rises on a standing order, that the chair be allowed the opportunity to determine that objection. It is the right of any member to raise an objection. Member for Diego Martin, Northeast, please proceed.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. And to arrive at the place we are today, where we are asking for this matter to go to a select committee, the opposition had certain demands. And one of the demands of the opposition is that the very process that is the subject of this motion that is now going to a select committee with the support of members opposite was a demand of the then UNC opposition that we appoint a police commissioner in this way, that the Police Service Commission, the reconstituted Police Service Commission, which would be a creature of Parliament, would send a notification to the President, it would come to the House for its approval. That was a demand of the then UNC opposition. So we find ourselves in this conundrum where after almost 7 years and $7 million, we have reached a point where, as the Honourable Member of Surujrattan has pointed out, that there are all sorts of issues in the public domain. There are all sorts of questions about the process, and we find ourselves in such a unfortunate situation as a parliament that we have no choice but to request that this matter be fully ventilated in the public as far as the rules of parliament will permit, that persons be summoned and be asked to come and explain exactly what transpired, that persons involved in the process would explain to the parliament and to the public, because we expect that this select committee will be televised, explain to everyone who is questioning all that we have read in the newspapers and the media for the past week. We require a select committee to flesh this all out so that we would understand how we have found ourselves in this situation where after almost 7 years and after an expenditure of $7 million, the procedure that was insisted upon by the UNC opposition, that was forced upon the then PNM government.
But I'm not going to allow you to continue along that course. We're not going back to what has happened in a previous debate that has passed. Please continue. Move on.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. It's just necessary to make the point. We are here because of the UNC. But be that as it may, Madam Speaker, the only way we will find out what has transpired is through the process of a select committee. I am told, Madam Speaker, that even though there may be members of the Police Service Commission who may no longer hold office, their term having expired, and because the process for the appointment of members of the Police Service Commission is now a parliamentary process, so in order to reappoint and make the Service Commission whole, a notification will have to come to this Parliament for members to debate and approve appointments to the Police Service Commission. And therefore, there are vacancies, and there are persons who were involved in the process who are no longer sitting members of the Police Service Commission. But I am told, and I believe, that the Parliament now has the power of subpoena, has always had the power of subpoena, so that even though persons may no longer be members of the Commission, the Parliament can summon them to come and give evidence before the Select Committee, and the country will then find out exactly what transpired in this fiasco that we find ourselves in. And therefore, I am heartened that the Leader of the Opposition has given full support, which is what I interpreted the Honourable Member's words to mean, the appointment of a Select Committee. And what I would say, Madam Speaker, with that expression of support coming from the Honourable Member for Siparia, that we can get this show on the road and appoint this committee. I beg to move, Madam Speaker.
Member for Oropuch East.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Madam Speaker, for the opportunity to join this limited debate. The last presenter from the Gomartin Northeast took us, albeit briefly, but threatened to take us for a longer journey to the deceased Patrick Manning and the Police Act of the early part of the century. And, Madam Speaker, it is not my intention to speak about the history of these matters, only in response to the member who spoke before me. And, Madam Speaker, of course, the member who spoke before me from the Gomartin Northeast brought with him the very familiar mantra of blame the UNC, blame Siparia, and respectfully I say blame Kamla. That is what he brought. Notwithstanding that, Madam Speaker, we expected that.
1 minute. And this is just an observation. I've realized, apparently members don't realize that when they speak, even if they're quoting something, it's their speech, okay? And a certain practice is developing. And I would want us to refrain from that. If we're speaking about a member here, the rules tell us how we do it, okay? So that this sort of practice of adopting somebody else's speech is ours when we say it here. Please.
Madam Speaker, thank you. I dare not repeat your words, but I understand them. Madam Speaker, the matter before us now is a matter for a motion to appoint a select committee of this House for a specific purpose. I must confess that earlier in the proceedings, I myself had a difficulty following the order of the procedure by the government in particular, because we did have a situation where the member for Diego Martin Northeast rose and then had to prematurely take his seat to allow the member for Diego Martin West to speak. Madam Speaker, as I understand it, and I just want to say for the record what I understand the process to be.
Overrule. Please continue.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I just want to explain what I understand the process to be, so I'll be very clear on my own presentation. As I understood it, Madam Speaker, the member for Diego Martin West opened the debate on the motion to affirm the notification from His Excellency the President. The member for Diego Martin West opened that debate, and the Leader of the House adjourned that debate to allow...
You've ruled on this similarly for my colleague.
What is that?
Okay, so, member for Oropuchis, as I indicated earlier, we're not going back to the earlier debate that has been adjourned. We are now with respect to this motion for the appointment of a select committee. So all who have been confused about the procedure, I think that has been settled, and let's deal with what is before us now, please.
Madam Speaker, I will move on to the motion that is before me, which is a specific motion dealing with an amendment to the substantive motion. Be it resolved that this committee to be appointed.
There's not an amendment to any substantive motion before us. There is a motion before us. There's no amendment. And a motion has already been adjourned, and we've gone on to a new motion. So I'm not going to allow you to continue with your misconception. I hope it is now clear. Please continue.
The clarification. So the second motion before us deals with the establishment of a select committee mandated to obtain information, documentation, and/or evidence relevant to and/or touching and concerning the method, process, criterion, and considerations utilized by the Police Service Commission and/or the firm employed by the Police Service Commission in the selection of candidates for the position of Commissioner of Police and Deputy Commissioner of Police, to enable the House of Representatives to consider the notifications submitted to it by His Excellency the President pursuant to Section 123 of the Constitution. That is the motion before us. Madam Speaker, as the member for Siparia indicated, those of us in the opposition certainly did not have time to read, to study, and to internalize and prepare for debate the motion before us, this motion on the Select Committee. It came very late, obviously, and now we have it in our hand to discuss. You see, Madam Speaker, we are debating this motion dealing with the establishment of a select committee against a backdrop of something else, which I will not speak about, because that has gone. Madam Speaker, a select committee of Parliament is indeed a very unique entity established with a very limited set of objectives. And, Madam Speaker, it has a particular role that we all agree is an important role. And not wanting to get into history, but this actually is a culmination of a greater desire and a greater objective to see greater and greater transparency in the affairs of government and parliament, so that the population as a whole can feel that there is no issue of lack of disclosure, no issue of corruption, as the case may be, misconduct, etc. And when this debate was taking place years ago, Madam Speaker, I was also on the compound at that time, and there was this zeal to see our parliament go in the direction, for better or for worse, of the American congressional system, where a subcommittee of the American Congress would meet to discuss appointments and
Madam
so
Speaker,
on.
standing orders 48.1 and 55.1b.
Please continue. I'll give you a little leeway.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. So, Madam Speaker, the intention then was to reach to this stage, and I am happy that today the Parliament has indeed, the 11th Parliament has reached a stage like this. The Leader of the Opposition has made this recommendation to the Prime Minister, and the government has accepted the wisdom of the recommendation from the member for Siparia, and we are here. Madam Speaker, regrettably, I understand and appreciate the words of the member for Deodat Northeast who spoke on this matter, and the importance of a select committee. A select committee, Madam Speaker, can examine policies, administration, even finance, even matters of finance. A select committee could examine
Madam Speaker,
that.
standing order
Madam
55.1b.
Speaker, a select committee can...
Please continue, Member for Opuchis.
Madam Speaker, it will be a busy afternoon for myself and you. Madam Speaker, these select committees can do something further. They can decide among themselves on a line of inquiry and pursue it, as the member for Siparia said. But I want to get into one issue because they will jump up at a moment's notice on repetition. Given the goodwill that appears to exist on this matter, the fact that the government has accepted the advice of the Leader of the Opposition, given that the government has now advanced this motion, and clearly those of us on this side, we suspect them, but we will agree that this is the right way to go. Madam Speaker, I would also ask the government to consider, given this goodwill, given the fact that there seems to be an agreement over this matter, to when at a time relevant to this matter, that we consider establishing a select committee with equal numbers from the government and equal numbers from the opposition. That would be the law.
Honourable Member, are you moving motion to amend?
Madam Speaker, I'm merely making a suggestion for those on the other side with wisdom. So, and Madam Speaker, given the gravity of the matter, as both sides agree now, why not appoint a committee with equal membership to build consensus on this matter? Madam Speaker, it is a humble suggestion. They can snigger, they can quarrel, they can groan, but it's my humble suggestion. You see, Madam Speaker, the select committee can act as in this case, as a review of what has happened at the Police Service Commission involving a consultant company and so on. It can act as a review on finance administration policy. But if we carry partisan politics into this committee, I am afraid we will undermine the very objective of the committee. This matter should not involve politics. It should involve wisdom. And involving wisdom means that you should have some parity between the government and the opposition, if only on this matter. Because what is the purpose to put a committee of 10 and so the opposition will have 1 and the government will have 9? What is that, just to go and talk? Clearly, we need to look at assembling the numbers in parity. Madam Speaker, while I welcome this initiative of the government, I welcome it. It's a pity that while there was so much news, information, this country was awash with information on other matters in the energy sector, fake oil, and so on. They rejected the appointment of a joint select committee to deal with fake oil.
Member, I am not going to permit you to speak about anything else other than the select committee proposed for this particular purpose. Okay? So that if you can move on to your next point, I will be willing to entertain you.
Madam Speaker, Madam Speaker, the Joint Select Committee plays a wide-ranging role, notwithstanding a limited mandate. And such committees can and do provide guidance to... This man has now counted my words.
Yes.
Okay, so member, we are not a joint select committee, we are on a select committee. I would ask you to move on to your next point. I think everybody has spoken to the benefits of the select committee. If you move on to your next point, I'll again be willing to hear you.
Madam Speaker, just on a point of clarification, would I be permitted a minute or two to respond to Diego Martin Norty's issues of the Police Act that he raised, the matter of Mr. former Prime Minister Patrick Manning's involvement with the opposition at that time? Would the UNC opposition...
Please move on. I circumscribe the member for Diego Martin Norty's with respect to that. Please move on to the other points.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker, could I just... In responding, Madam Speaker, only to what has been said in the Select Committee motion, the government indicated through the Prime Minister and through the Diego Martin Norty's that arriving at this motion to establish a Select Committee, a specific motion, they arrived at this motion because of information in the public domain. It was not a motion arrived at the end of a debate on the matter. Sometimes you have a debate on a matter and it is felt that the matter is so complicated, the matter is so comprehensive, we must make a select committee to further deal with the matter. This is an interesting point. We entered into the formation of a select committee at the beginning.
Member, you have already said about how special the process is. I am not going to allow you to go back to the initial debate. And therefore, if you could move on to your other points, please.
Madam Speaker, the other point I wish to raise, and this is a specific point on this, is the deadline for this matter. I think I can raise that because that is pertinent. Madam Speaker, the government, having made a manifesto commitment to appoint a police commissioner, the government, having provided this population with a promise that by December last, we would have a commissioner of police in place, will now go to this select committee and has indicated that the deadline they are looking at is March 31st. Madam Speaker, we are now on February 2nd, I believe. We have, Madam Speaker, the carnival break coming up. One is not sure how that will work with parliamentary meetings and so on. And to ask whether the government in any way would use this process to further delay the appointment of a commissioner of police. Because, Madam Speaker, the select committee needs to work quickly to ensure that this matter is dealt with expeditiously and cannot further create or add to or even manufacture a crisis on this matter.
Madam Speaker,
and Madam
order
Speaker,
48.6.
Member, please continue.
Madam Speaker, this distraction is causing me. This thing can impair my health the way they're jumping up there. So, Madam Speaker, my point really is that we need to watch the timeline, whether it is realistic or not. And if March 31st is realistic, given the bulky nature of this, I don't want to repeat it, it is already in the record 3 times. Given what they are asking this committee to do, whether March 31st is realistic or not, or that is just a guise to come March 30th and extend for 6 months and 3 months, then the parliamentary year comes to an end. Then you go into the next parliamentary year, the next fiscal year, the budget comes, and this matter remains on the drawing board, on the table, for 2-3 years. Is that their objective? Madam Speaker, thank you.
Member for point 410.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, Thank you for allowing me the pleasure to join in this motion to appoint a special select committee. Madam Speaker, as Minister of National Security, I wish to let the public know that I have waited very long for the day when the nominee for the Commissioner of Police would be selected and debated in this House. Madam Speaker, and to a large extent, that date is up to this House and in particular the members on the other side. Madam Speaker, the Ministry of National Security has been in a period of waiting for this process to come to a stage of appointment for quite some time. We've waited almost 7 years with respect to the appointment of Commissioner of Police to an institution which I can say with greatest degree of honesty is the agency responsible for law enforcement in Trinidad and Tobago. Madam Speaker, we are in an area where crime is foremost in our minds, where we are dealing with a situation where the safety and security of Trinidad and Tobago is very important to each and every citizen of this country. And therefore, the institution that is there to safeguard that, the institution at the point of despair, the institution with the responsibility for law and order and for security in Trinidad and Tobago must be an institution that is governed and led in the proper way, Madam Speaker. And so the appointment of a Commissioner of Police, a substantive Commissioner of Police, is very important for this organization. It is so important, Madam Speaker, that even in the process, one must be very careful. And even in the selection process, Madam Speaker, one must be very...
Member for point 14, remember, we're just talking now about the select committee. So please, one, again, I advise members about the rule against tedious repetition, and this is not about crime or anything else. It is about the appointment of a select committee.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, it is therefore important, Madam Speaker, that in terms of the motion to appoint a special select committee, that we adhere to certain timelines in the processes. But more importantly, Madam Speaker, that we treat the issues particular within that motion. Because the issues has to do and must concentrate on the whole process that took place that is before us, Madam Speaker. It is important that we as a House understand, but even more so as a people, understand what are the implications, what are the ramifications of the processes, Madam Speaker. And so the timeline is very important because, Madam Speaker, we have to understand that we are here to a large extent where the Minister of National Security was removed from the entire process. And that, again, was an area of just stymie the whole process based on the opposition's intervention.
So that was unconstitutional.
Madam Speaker, 48-1, that is not the motion.
Member for point 14, please continue on your other point.
Madam Speaker, one can only look at what has happened in other jurisdictions with respect to the selection process of Commissioner of Police to get an understanding that we are not unique in looking at certain kinds of attributes, ensuring there are certain kind of attributes that has been part and parcel of the selection process. I can look, for example, Madam Speaker.
Let us talk about the selection process in this debate. Please move on to the other point.
Sure, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, therefore, let me concentrate then on the special select committee. Madam Speaker, I believe that it is very important for us to move to that special select committee because, again, as I said, it is so important for this House to participate in that process, for this House to have an understanding, for members of this House on both sides to have an understanding as to what has transpired to the extent where we have before us nominees for Commissioner of Police, and 2 Deputy Commissioner of Police. It is important for us to understand that process, for us to be able to vote.
Please. 55(1)B.
Member for point 410. Please move on to your next point.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I want to emphasize in terms of the deadline for this process, Madam Speaker. And the deadline is and has been stated as the 31st of March. It is the deadline that's required to complete this process.
Please continue.
Madam Speaker, this timeline is very important. And when one considers that it took us 7 years, we are looking at roughly, Madam Speaker, 2 months. It took 7 years, so long under the opposition, where they never even made attempts to appoint a substantive commissioner of police. We have seen that, in fact, the acting commissioner of police has, in fact, been given until March 2018. So we're acting around the same timeline. We're acting for
Madam
the same
Speaker,
timeline.
48(1), the relevance of the acting commissioner.
Please continue, member for point 410.
Madam Speaker, the timeline that we're asking for is no different than the time that has been given to the acting commissioner of police who holds the office at this point in time, the 31st of March. So therefore, I see no contention whatsoever, no contention from the other side with respect to our demand or request for the 31st of March deadline. It will give us sufficient time in the Special Select Committee to really and truly to be satisfy ourselves without any doubt and become comfortable in the selection of that very important position, Commissioner of Police and Deputy Commissioner of Police, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, in addition to that, Madam Speaker, we have to also understand that we're treating with governance and leadership of the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service. At the end of the day, what we do in this House, what we do at the Special Select Committee, will have implications to the governance and leadership of the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service. So we must, Madam Speaker, with due diligence, carry our jobs as parliamentarians efficiently and effectively. If it's one area that we must share commonality, if it's one area that this House should come together with, Madam Speaker, it is this important motion before us to go before that Special Select Committee with a singleness of purpose to ensure the security of people of Trinidad and Tobago. Madam Speaker, I therefore say, let us remember the importance of this motion. Let us stick by our deadline. We're saying that the 18th of March, the 31st of March, 2018, is the time by which we can deal with this. Let us do so, Madam Speaker, for the benefit of the people of Trinidad and Tobago. I thank you.
Member for Roodal Moonilal.
Thank you very kindly, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, the motion that is before us is very clear. It is for the establishment of a select committee of the House of Representatives. Madam Speaker, I've heard the member for Oropouche East and other members on the side opposite to this saying sotto voce that we must have equal members in terms of the composition of the select committee. Madam Speaker, one thing I'd like to just say is when we have equal numbers on both sides, we will have equal numbers in the select committee. Until then, until we change the standing orders will prevail. We do not have equal numbers. We do not have equal numbers. We are in the majority. You are in the minority. And let me just refer you to Standing Order 96, Composition and Chairman of Select Committees. Standing Order 96. Every select committee shall be so constituted as to ensure, so far as is possible, that the balance of parties in the House is reflected in the committee. 2, in computing the balance of the parties, A, parties which are in a coalition will be treated as one group. So that would mean the UNC and the one member or the one COP who is the COP. You are that coalition. Parties which are in a coalition will be treated as one group. Opposition parties with fewer than 3 members and independent members will altogether be treated as one group. 3, where a member of a select committee dies or for any other reason his seat becomes vacant, then, subject to the preceding paragraph, the Speaker shall appoint another member in his place. 4, except as otherwise provided by these standing orders or by special direction of the House, a select committee may elect a chairman from among its members. 5, before participating in the consideration of any item of business before a committee in which he has a financial interest, a member should disclose the extent of that interest. A special, and this is Standing Order 9, that is the end of Standing Order 96. So that puts to rest equal numbers. Standing Order 95. The House may from time to time appoint special select committees. 2, a special select committee shall be appointed by order of the House, which shall specify the terms of reference of the committee and shall consist of such members as may be directed by order of the House, and in the absence of such direction, shall consist of such members as may be chosen by the Speaker. Madam Speaker, that issue of us having equal numbers is not on. These standing orders do not allow for it, and at this time we have 23, you have 18. And let me just make the additional point that these standing orders, the committee was chaired by then Speaker Wade Mark, who is now a member of the Senate, who continues to be a member of the UNC. You agreed to this. Thank you very much. Madam Speaker, may I just make one other point? The member for Oropouche East, again, made the point that it is very important for us to have a police commissioner, and we are in full agreement. But I just want to remind those on the opposite side that they are on record as saying that it is better to have an acting commissioner because he would work more effectively. We, the Attorney General under the member for Siparia, yeah, but that is, you have never refuted that point.
Member for Ruka Maloney.
Thank you very kindly, Madam Speaker. So, Madam Speaker, whereas at the conclusion of the tenure of Commissioner Gibbs, there didn't seem to be any haste in appointing a commissioner.
Speaker, 48-1, irrelevance.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. Yes, there didn't seem to be any haste at that time. Now, whereas the member for Digger Martin West has said very clearly that the information in the public domain suggests that there are some concerns with regard to what has taken place, and there is a clear need for the House to have a committee to examine exactly what took place. The date of March 31st is a date that we are certain the members of the committee can meet And of course, given the standing orders, if there is a need to extend, which we anticipate there would not be, that they can come to the House and ask for an extension. Madam Speaker, we were very clear in moving this motion. We said that the committee would be mandated to obtain information, documentation, evidence, touching and concerning the method, process, criterion, considerations used not only by the Police Service Commission, but also by the firm employed. And Madam Speaker, just on that issue, I would like to make the clear point that the order that went out to with regard to the President under 123(2), the order was quite clear, and it said, the selection process for appointment to the offices of Commissioner of Police and Deputy Commissioner of Police shall be conducted in the following manner. The Commission, on request of the Minister of National Security, shall, in accordance with Section 20A1C of the Central Tenders Board Act, contract an appropriate local firm, hereinafter referred to as a firm, to conduct a recruitment process, including invited applications for the positions. B, the firm shall select from the applications received the most suitable candidates for the assessment process.
Member, I would ask, therefore, you leave all of that work for the work of the committee, please.
Madam Speaker, I would like to indicate the concern that the Commission worked diligently to adhere to what was requested of it. And that is in the letter that we all received with the documents that we got with the notification. But one point that was of particular interest to those on this side and to the members of this side was what was said at the last page of the letter of the chairman of the commission, which was, all applicants at this stage were interviewed for the position.
Madam, 48-1, please.
Member, again, I've asked that the work that we're setting out for the committee be left out of the debate, please.
Madam Speaker, if you so desire, but I'm just trying to place on... I am not challenging the Speaker. I have never done that, as a matter of fact. As leader of the House, I would never do that.
Member, please continue on your point, your other point, and your time. While I understand that everybody is very eager and excited, I would ask people to please comply with the standing orders. Member for Urukamuluni, you have a few minutes left to wind up. If you could continue on your other point, please.
Thank you. Madam Speaker, one of the issues that was of concern and that was within the public domain was the issue that there may have been the possibility that the assessment center was only geared for assessing the Commissioner of Police. And that is why the position of Commissioner, and that is why in the request for the select committee, we have included as part of the mandate issues touching and concerning and the considerations utilized by the Police Service Commission and the firm employed by the Police Service Commission in the selection of the candidates. And that is of particular importance in terms of the mandate of this select committee, Madam Speaker. And Madam Speaker, I again commend this motion to the House. I am very pleased to see that the member for Siparia is in agreement with a select committee being appointed. And Madam Speaker, based on what has been said by those of us on this side and by the member for Siparia, I beg to move.
Honourable members, the question is, be it resolved that a special select committee of the House be established for the purpose of obtaining additional and particular information to enable the House of Representatives to consider the notification submitted to it by His Excellency the President, pursuant to Section 123 of the Constitution. Be it resolved that this committee be mandated to A, obtain information, documentation, and/or evidence relevant to and/or touching and concerning the method, process, criterion, and considerations utilized by the Police Service Commission and/or the firm employed by the Police Service Commission in the selection of the candidates for the position of Commissioner of Police and Deputy Commissioner of Police, to enable the House of Representatives to consider the notification submitted to it by His Excellency, the President, pursuant to Section 123 of the Constitution, and report by March 31st, 2018. All in favor say aye. Aye. Any against? The ayes have it. Leader of the House.
Thank you very kindly, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I now beg to move that the following members be appointed to serve on the Special Select Committee of the House that has been established for the purpose of obtaining additional and particular information to enable the House of Representatives to consider the notification submitted to it by His Excellency the President, pursuant to Section 123 of the Constitution. Mr. Fitzgerald Hines, Mr. Randall Mitchell, Ms. Nicole Oliver, Mr. Terence Dial Singh, Mr. Ganga Singh, and Dr. Roodal Moonilal.
Honourable members, the question is that the following members be appointed to serve on the Special Select Committee of the House, established for the purpose of obtaining additional and particular information to enable the House of Representatives to consider the notification submitted to it by His Excellency, the President, to consider the notification submitted to it by His Excellency the President, pursuant to Section 123 of the Constitution. Mr. Fitzgerald Hines, Mr. Rondell Mitchell, Ms. Nicole Oliver, Mr. Terence Dial Singh, Mr. Ganga Singh, Dr. Roodal Moonilal. All in favor say aye. Aye. Any against? The ayes have it. The member for Diego Martin, North East.
Madam Speaker, I beg to move the following motion standing in my name. Be it resolved that this House adopt the report of the Joint Select Committee appointed to consider and report on the Insurance Bill 2016. Madam Speaker, we are here today, finally, to enact new insurance legislation. I'm certain we'll all agree that this legislation to regulate and supervise the insurance industry is very much overdue. The bill before you today represents many years of analysis, research, and consultation with various stakeholders, supplemented by many long hours of deliberation by the Joint Select Committee of Parliament, which was appointed to consider and report on the Insurance Bill 2016, and I will give further details of this later on. I think it's disappointing to all that even with the CL financial CLICO crisis of 2009, our insurance sector is still being governed by woefully deficient legislation which dates back to the 1980s and which cannot adequately address current risks in today's insurance sector. By contrast, banking and securities sectors are governed by more modern legislation, such as the Financial Institutions Act and the Securities Act, which were enacted in 2008 and 2012. I'll compare this to the Insurance Act, which is from 1980. Madam Speaker, the insurance sector is a very important component of the financial system, but the system is only as strong as its weakest link. We in Trinidad and Tobago believe, and it is widely regarded, that we are the financial center of the Caribbean. Yet our insurance legislation is outdated and lags way behind our Caribbean counterparts. Jamaica, for example, underwent major institutional and legislative reform following its 1990 financial crisis. It is therefore instructive that Trinidad and Tobago learns from its own costly crisis and enacts appropriate legislation to govern the insurance industry. In 2009, the central bank was successful in fast-tracking specific amendments to the Insurance Act of 1980. The major issues were enhancement of the provisions governing assets to be placed in a statutory fund by acquiring insurance companies carrying on long-term insurance business or motor vehicle insurance business to have sufficient assets in the statutory fund to meet their policyholder liabilities as established in their quarterly returns. Strengthening of the provisions to afford the central bank access to the premises of an insurance company if the bank was physically prevented from physically entering the premises. Replacement of the intervention process, which was time-consuming and hindered the effectiveness of the regulator. The process was replaced then, in 2009, with a more flexible regime which allows the central bank to issue compliance directions. Replacement of the costly and time-consuming process of judicial management and permitting the central bank to share information with other regulators, both in Trinidad and Tobago, as well as other jurisdictions, where insurance companies registered in Trinidad and Tobago conduct business. After 2009, efforts continued in the formulation of a completely new bill. However, all of these efforts, for one reason or another, Madam Speaker, were unsuccessful. For example, the Insurance Bill 2011 was laid in Parliament on the 25th of November 2011 and lapsed on the 26th of June 2012. The Insurance Bill 2013 was laid in Parliament on the 28th of May 2013 and lapsed on the 10th of July 2013. The Insurance Number 2 Bill 2013 was laid in Parliament on the 19th of November 2013 and lapsed on the 30th of July 2014. The Insurance Bill 2015 was laid in Parliament on the 21st of April 2015 and lapsed on the 17th of June 2015. So, Madam Speaker, there were 4 attempts between 2011 and 2015 to get to the place where we are today. Unfortunately, none of these attempts succeeded in bringing a report of a Joint Select Committee, and I might say this report is consensual. We had a very good session. We had very good sessions. Everybody contributed. Everybody collaborated, government and opposition and independents, and we were able to arrive at consensus and bring the report on the consideration and examination of the Insurance Bill 2016 to the Parliament with unanimous agreement. So finally, the Insurance Bill 2016 was introduced in the House of Representatives in July 2016. It represents the product of the previous Parliament's work, including the work of previous Joint Select Committees. And it is now before the House, as I indicated, following examination by the Joint Select Committee. Madam Speaker, the existence of a sound insurance market will facilitate the financial goals of individuals as well as the business community by protecting the society's assets. Insurance and pension industries are long-term investors in projects and businesses and in the country's infrastructure, and thereby facilitate sustainable growth and economic development. I am told that the assets of the insurance industry total approximately 50 billion Trinidad and Tobago dollars as of September 2017, and account for approximately 33% of the GDP of Trinidad and Tobago. Assets under management for the pension sector total 51 billion Trinidad and Tobago dollars and account for 34% of our GDP. The combined assets of the insurance and pension sector, therefore, are in excess of 100 billion Trinidad and Tobago dollars. Billion. It's okay. Let me repeat. The combined assets of the insurance and pension sectors are of the order of in excess of 100 billion Trinidad and Tobago dollars, of which more than 1/3 is invested in securities of the government of Trinidad and Tobago. So that should give some idea of how important the insurance and pension sector are. The importance is not only related to its size, but also its interconnectivity with other financial institutions and sectors of the economy. However, there are many gaps in the almost 40-year-old Insurance Act of 1980, and this is why new legislation is urgently needed. The current insurance legislation does not require insurance companies to maintain adequate capital buffers for the risks on their balance sheets. In fact, believe it or not, insurance companies carrying on long-term insurance business are required to have share capital of a mere $3 million. Consider $3 million in share capital to the Clico fiasco. Just consider that, the fiasco with Colonial Life. We're talking about billions of dollars. But insurance companies are only required to have, long-term insurance companies, to have share capital of a mere $3 million. General insurance companies are only required to have share capital of $1 million. This has not changed since 1980. And I think we will all agree this is totally unacceptable when insurance companies are holding millions and sometimes billions of policyholders' funds. The existing insurance legislation lacks adequate provisions to ensure effective governance and risk management of insurance companies. There may be significant deficiencies in insurance companies and their practices, and we may not know. It is important that directors and management are now to be required by law to fulfill their fiduciary obligations to protect policyholders' funds. The proposed legislation that is the subject of the report codifies a number of the new responsibilities of the board, which represent minimum standards consistent with a higher duty of care expected of a financial institution. In 1980, the adherence to a duty of care was for some reason not as obvious and important as it is today. There are inadequate provisions in the law for the supervision of financial groups. Consolidated supervision of conglomerates is commonplace in most developed jurisdictions, and facilitates the sharing of information among supervisors of financial entities in the group to ensure effective oversight of the group as a whole. Consolidated supervision can be found in the legislation of many jurisdictions, including the USA, Canada, Australia, UK, and Jamaica, and even in the Local Financial Institutions Act of 2008, which governs the local banking sector. So if you have a conglomerate which has both insurance, an insurance company, and a bank within its portfolio, up to now, and until this law is passed, the regulator cannot have consolidated in examination of the group. So they have to look at the insurance company separately under Insurance Act and look at the bank separately under the relevant legislation. So again, arising from the CL Financial, Clico Investment Bank, Clico fiasco, you can see the urgent need to upgrade our legislation. Now, well before the 2008 global financial crisis, IMF and World Bank missions in 2005 forewarned about the risk posed by the rapid structural changes in Trinidad and Tobago's financial system and the shortcomings in our legislative and regulatory framework. If we quote from the 2005 IMF Financial Sector Assessment Program report, it tells us that the contractual savings sector has replaced banking as the single largest segment, and a few regionally active mixed activities conglomerates have become dominant. Sharp reversals in equity prices may adversely affect the insurance and pension sectors. Rising levels of connected exposure in some conglomerates have increased the risk of contagion. Given a regionally active complex financial system, the segmentation of the core legislative, regulatory, and supervisory framework suggests the urgency of reform in these areas. Changes are required to facilitate consolidated supervision and regulation of financial institutions, including their cross-border activities, and to transform the supervisory structure, including financial reporting, into a more integrated and risk-based framework. Critical gaps remain in the overall legal, regulatory, and supervisory structure. It has been 13 years since that IMF FSAP report, and one financial crisis later, these legislative gaps identified in 2005 still remain. And when you again use the example of the Clico, CL Financial, Clico Investment Bank situation, these were all companies owned by one holding company. They were all interconnected, they were all trading with each other, but they were all regulated by different entities under different laws. And this is what allowed various elements within the group to do things that were not picked up by the regulatory agencies. And we are reaping the outcome of that at this time. This insurance bill of 2016 will provide the regulator with the authority required to properly supervise the sector and protect the interests of policyholders. There are 7 critical aspects of this bill that I would like to share with you, Madam Speaker, and members opposite, and members on my side, as follows. The first critical component of the bill is intended to stem excessive risk-taking and promote good governance and sound risk and capital management practices by management and boards of directors of regulated entities. By way of example, the Chief Executive Officer and the Chief Financial Officer must now sign a statement acknowledging the Board of Directors and management's responsibility for preparing financial statements, maintaining adequate internal controls, establishing and maintaining adequate procedures for the settlement of claims, and complying with the prudential criteria, regulations, and guidelines issued by the central bank. The bill will also make it mandatory to have an audit committee. The audit committee will comprise at least 3 directors, a majority of whom must be independent and must include 1 financial expert. The bill also imposes restrictions on an insurer
in respect of the credit exposures that it can directly or indirectly incur to any person, including a borrower group, related group, connected party, or any connected group. It also requires that the board of directors of an insurer must ensure there are policies and procedures established for transactions with connected parties and employees. The second critical element of the bill seeks to ensure robust balance sheets and adequate capital buffers are held to cater for unanticipated losses. Owners or stakeholders must have a stake in the outcome and have skin in the game, as they say. Currently, there are companies doing billions of dollars in business, and as I said before, insurance companies are only required to have $3 million in paid-up capital, and general insurance companies $1 million in paid-up capital. Now, with this bill, which I would expect would get the support of the House, insurance companies and financial holding companies will be required to hold adequate capital and adequate and appropriate forms of liquidity. And insurance companies who carry on business overseas will be required to maintain and hold adequate assets to support their liabilities to foreign policyholders. Again, a very contentious matter that has arisen from the CLICO fiasco, where policyholders in foreign countries are looking to the government of Trinidad and Tobago to make good their losses. They use Trinidad and Tobago taxpayers' money to make good losses of foreign citizens who had deposits or policies with insurance companies. The third critical, so now insurance companies will be required to maintain and hold adequate assets to support their liabilities to foreign policyholders. That is not the current situation. The third critical aspect of the bill will impose standards of market conduct on insurers and their salespeople in dealing with the public, and give the regulator the power to revoke an insurer's registration where practices are found to be unfair to the general public or there are unreasonable delays in settlement. The fourth critical element of the bill is the objective to expand the range of tools for preventative and prompt corrective action and intervention by the central bank. The regulator must now take action when an insurer's capital ratio falls to a certain critical level. That critical level is set at 70%. The mandatory intervention gives the insurer 60 days to remedy the situation, failing which the board of the central bank can suspend the company or direct the bank to apply to the court for a judicial manager or wind up the company. And by the capital ratio, Madam Speaker, it is meant current assets versus current liabilities. So these are assets that are easily and readily available to meet current liabilities. So once the capital ratio falls below 70%, the central bank can intervene, apply to the court for a judicial manager, and so on. Fifthly, the bill provides an effective deterrent for breaches of the legislation via a regime of increased fines and penalties. Sixthly, the bill has critical provisions for the restructuring of business groups that engage in financial and non-financial activities and would require the formation of a holding company to hold exclusively the regulated financial entities in the group. In other words, no longer can you have a conglomerate that would have a trading company, a distribution company, a retail company, an insurance company, and a bank, all under one holding company. Now, such a conglomerate will have to create or form a financial holding company to hold exclusively the regulated financial entities in the group. So you'll no longer have any commingling of the assets of financial entities in the group with the assets of non-financial entities in the group. The seventh critical aspect of the bill seeks to allow the regulator to deal with the re-emergence of systemically important conglomerates in the region by providing the power to approve and deal more clearly with the fitness and propriety of ultimate controllers, the power to require the establishment of financial holding companies to avoid group risk, limits on related party transactions, a requirement that mergers and acquisitions be first approved by the central bank, oversight over overseas subsidiaries, and providing for minimum capital at the level of the holding company, in addition to minimum capital at the level of the insurance subsidiary. Let me just touch briefly now, Madam Speaker, on the regulations that accompany the bill. The regulations to the Insurance Bill 2016 will strengthen our ability to ensure the safety and resilience of the insurance sector. They introduce significant improvements to ensure that companies maintain adequate levels of assets, capital, and buffers to withstand any risk that may befall them. The regulations include a regulation on risk-based capital, and this is by far, Madam Speaker, the single most important regulatory change in the bill. It will require insurers, in addition to the new minimum stated capital of 15 million, so we're going up from 3 to 15, additional capital commensurate with their risk profile. And depending on the risk that the company is exposed to, it will result in hundreds of millions of dollars in additional regulatory capital. Every insurer will be required to maintain a regulatory capital ratio of at least 150%. Liability, assets versus liabilities. So now no longer would you have this small, almost insignificant capital standard of 3 million. You may now go to a situation where, depending on the risk exposure of an insurance company, they will require they will be required to hold hundreds of millions of dollars in regulatory capital. Additionally, the regulations will change the valuation methodology. The current legislation does not define a common approach or methodology for valuing a company's obligations to its policyholders. To address this, the new legislation introduces the Caribbean Policy Premium Methodology to harmonize the valuation of liabilities for long-term insurers. What this means, Madam Speaker, is no longer can insurance companies use whatever methodology they choose to value their liabilities, their obligations, and so on. They must now subject themselves to a common standard, which is the Caribbean Policy Premium Methodology, to determine what their obligations are to their policyholders. So no longer will it be arbitrary. Now it will be regulated. Financial condition reports. An important aspect of the new governance and risk management process is the ability to stress test the operations of an insurer using extreme but plausible scenarios. The process would highlight a company's vulnerabilities and the potential impact on its capital, allowing appropriate action to be taken to limit undue risk. The financial crisis has shown us that non-traditional business activities can have a detrimental impact on insurance companies. Sorry. The new legislation will require companies to perform a number of tests that will stress their balance sheets to determine their resilience. Madam Speaker, through you, I am so sorry that I'm talking about a very technical piece of legislation that has over 200 clauses. And I'm afraid in order to explain it, I must use the market jargon. And if this is causing my honorable friend opposite to fall asleep, I apologize. Armed with the information gleaned from the financial condition reports, no problems. The central bank will have, it's technical, will have the power to direct an insurer to increase its capital in line with its risk profile. Let me go now to the work of the Joint Select Committee. In February 2017, the House of Representatives and the Senate passed resolutions establishing a Joint Select Committee to consider and report on a bill entitled the Insurance Bill 2016. The committee comprised members of the government and opposition from both houses of Parliament. The committee, cognizant of the need for transparency and consultation, decided that stakeholders, including members of the public, should be invited to comment on the bill. It also decided that key stakeholders such as the Insurance Brokers Association of Trinidad and Tobago, the Association of Trinidad and Tobago Insurance Companies, and the Central Bank would be engaged directly by the committee. The committee caused notices to be published in the daily newspapers, on the Parliament website, and in social media in 2017, calling on the public to submit comments on the bill. We received written responses from members of the public and also received written submissions from Lloyd's of London, from the Association of Insurance Companies, from the Association of Insurance Brokers, and the Central Bank. Based on the volume of comments, it was necessary to examine the submissions on a clause-by-clause basis. And I must, at this time, thank the staff from the Chief Parliamentary Counsel's Department and from the Ministry of Finance in their very comprehensive examination of submissions from everyone, from the insurance companies, from the brokers, from the public, and the application of these comments to each of the 200-odd clauses in the bill. And they explained it very well for us, and as a result, we were able to move swiftly, and all members of the committee were able to understand and make decisions as to how we would treat with proposed amendments. At meetings of the committee, the insurance companies and insurance brokers made presentations outlining their concerns and comments and recommendations with respect to amendments to the bill. We also met with representatives of the Central Bank who commented on the submissions made by ATIC, IBAT, and Lloyd's of London. We also decided in the pursuit of full transparency to share the Central Bank's comments with ATIC and IBAT to allow everyone an opportunity to comment on everyone's submissions. I want again to thank all stakeholders and members of the public for their submissions and their invaluable engagement on the issues surrounding the bill. We went through the bill clause by clause, and we looked at stakeholder submissions. Following a comprehensive review of the submissions, as well as discussions with our supporting technical team, we identified several aspects of the bill that required deeper consideration and possible adjustment. These included whether amendments to provisions concerning fines and penalties ought to be classified as summary, hybrid, or indictable, whether there should be consequential amendments to the bill arising out of the FATCA Act. We looked at the ability of brokers to negotiate and procure insurance directly from foreign companies. We looked at the ratio of local and foreign assets in which insurance companies should be allowed to invest. We also looked at the procedure for allowing foreign insurance adjusters to do business in Trinidad and Tobago, and whether there should be any strict liability offenses. These are just some of the areas that we looked at. The significant amendments arising from this very comprehensive examination of the bill are as follows. We have amended the definition of an annuity contract. We have amended the bill to make it consistent with the requirements of the Financial Institutions Act. We have dealt with offenses and classified them as either indictable, summary, or hybrid. Hybrid offenses are those that can be tried either way. We have looked at offenses that run across the spectrum of severity and complexity, and we have a tiered approach in terms of fines and custodial sentences that are linked to the gravity of the offense. We also corrected some lacunae where there were no penalties or no methodology for dealing with offenses. With respect to FATCA, we have amended the bill to allow the Central Bank to share information with the Board of Inland Revenue, for the inspector to issue compliance directions for a breach of the guidelines to give effect to the intergovernmental agreement between Trinidad and Tobago and the United States, and for the Central Bank to issue guidelines to give effect to the Tax Information Exchange Agreement, better known as FACTA. We also looked at the appropriate ratio of local and foreign assets in which insurance companies are allowed to invest. The requirement, Madam Speaker, for insurance to match liabilities with a specific percentage of local assets is a historical position to encourage local investment. The maximum permissible share of foreign assets permitted by the current Act of 20% has been the status quo for many, many years. We looked at it in the case of the evolution of the industry, the global context, and we are recommending that the percentage of foreign assets in which an insurer can invest be increased from 20% to 30%. And that where liabilities for a policy are payable in a foreign currency, the insurer shall invest in foreign assets in that currency in an amount not less than 70% of the liability. We also sought to avoid strict liability offenses, Madam Speaker. That was a representation from the industry. They found some of the fines and the penalties were excessive, and we did agree to avoid strict liability so that persons would have a right to put their position before the regulator and before the court. Madam Speaker, I think I have covered most of the salient points that are contained in our voluminous report. I could not possibly go through everything in this report in 45 minutes. It's 489 pages long, the report. It would have been impossible in 45 minutes to do that. I simply want to say that I'm extremely grateful to all members of the committee who served with me on the Joint Select Committee. Their active interest, interrogation, analysis, and contributions have resulted in what we believe to be a refined and highly improved piece of legislation. In conclusion, I wish to emphasize that this bill has been driven by international best practice. It has been driven by lessons learned in the wake of our own financial crisis in the insurance sector. It is the product of a robust and extremely comprehensive and exhaustive consultative process with all stakeholders. I sincerely hope that the recent financial crises, as well as our own crises, as well as our own stresses in our own crises and own stresses in the local insurance industry, have convinced everyone, not just in this Parliament but outside, of the need for modern legislation to cope with a modern insurance sector. We can no longer afford, Madam Speaker, to work with outdated, archaic, 38-year-old insurance legislation. We have been left behind by the rest of the world. It is time for us to step up, and we must correct the lacunae and deficiencies in the current insurance legislation. And I therefore invite parliamentarians to support this bill and provide the required protection for citizens of Trinidad and Tobago. I beg to move, Madam Speaker.
Honourable members, I will now propose the question for debate. Be it resolved that this House adopt the report of the Joint Select Committee appointed to consider and report on the Insurance Bill 2016. Member for Tabaki.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I too would like to begin by putting on record my appreciation and that of my colleagues who sat on the Joint Select Committee, as well as the leader of the opposition and the entire opposition bench, our gratitude to the technical staff who contributed to the realization of what we consider to be a very important piece of legislation in the governance structure of the country, and particularly related to financial institutions, because insurance companies have evolved from mere selling a policy into really what might be regarded as investment organizations, which can make or break the fortunes of people as well as organizations. Madam Speaker, I also want to state, with all respect, that I hope that this example of what occurred in the deliberations at the Joint Select Committee on this particular insurance bill would signal to the government that when the opposition, in its wisdom, puts forward the idea for certain legislation to go to the JSC so that there could be consensus that works for the improvement of the lives of all our citizens, and also provide a new image of what this parliament is about and what can be achieved when you have a consensual approach to legislation. I hope that the government will take note of that and in the future will cooperate more with the opposition in getting good legislation on the books of Trinidad and Tobago. Madam Speaker, the Parliament is here to serve the people and the interests of the people. And while my honourable friend from Diego Martin Northeast spoke very well about the different technical aspects of the bill, I think that one aspect of what we have to consider is where are the consumers in all of this, the ones who consume insurance. I also want to place on record our appreciation for the work that Mr. Larry Hawaii and before him, Mr. Winston Dukaran had also done in contributing to this bill and to bringing it to the Parliament. Because there was an Express article in the time when Governor Ewart Williams was the central bank governor. And even then, Mr. Dukaran was talking about 32 insurance companies holding assets amounting to 26% of the GDP. And even then, we recognized, while we were in government, the important role that regulation should play in the insurance industry, because we saw what had happened to the CLICO in the CLICO matter. And to quote Finance Minister Dukaran then, he said, 26% of the GDP being held in assets by 32 insurance companies is an enormous stranglehold for a financial subsector that, in his words, have no prescribed actuarial standards. And that is why it's so important in this bill that the role of the actuaries have been defined. And insurance companies will have, in fact, to rely on actuaries in order to do some of the work that will protect the interests of the people who consume insurance. But you know, what is telling is a final paragraph in an Express editorial that said, we take some issue with Mr. Harris, and that's William Harris, who was then president of ATIC, who was quoted as saying that some measures in the bill are punitive and that they took issue with them. But the Express said, we take some issue with Mr. Harris' stand and support Mr. Williams. If insurers play by the rules, given we are talking about billions of dollars, and the minister did indicate almost $100 billion, in premium payments a year, they have nothing to fear, punitive or otherwise. 1 million or so policyholders and the state coffers must be protected from elements that thrive on premium incomes, but callously, I repeat, callously dismiss legitimate claims. Bring on the new Insurance Act. And that was the view of the public. The public wants a new Insurance Act, and they're about to get a new Insurance Act. And, Madam Speaker, it will be a red-letter day and a day of significant social advancement in this country if our country, as a society, would be able to regulate business behavior in particular on the basis of the practice of personal ethics and the best human values. Madam Speaker, there is law which is enforceable, and there is ethics which is unenforceable. And sometimes in societies where you cannot enforce ethics on people, you have to rely on law. But it would be a red-letter day if really people can practice the highest level of business ethics. Unfortunately, we still live in a world, and particularly in Trinidad, I dare say, where human beings are generally greedy, and consideration for the rights of others are often trumped by that personal greed. And as such, we need laws like this, like what we have here in this Insurance Act. And I make no apology for supporting what others might describe as draconian legislation in terms of the fines and so on that are imposed for breaches of this act. I make no apologies for that, because consumers have suffered tremendously at the hands of insurers in this country, Madam Speaker. We have suffered tremendously. Madam Speaker, between 2008 and 2011, I have tried to get the statistics out of the Office of the Financial Ombudsman after that. But there were 2,000 reported cases against insurance companies between those 3 years, 2008 to 2011. So I am extremely pleased that this insurance bill is before the Parliament, and having gone through what my friend described as a rigorous examination, and in one in which, you know, the interests of the stakeholders, the industry practitioners, was in fact listened to and given due consideration, and they came before the committee and they will be able to present their case. Madam Speaker, for far too long, I want to repeat, consumers have suffered at the hands of insurance companies, Madam Speaker. Sometimes I wonder whether the premiums that are charged to consumers really relate to the risks that the insurance companies face with those particular consumers. How are these rates established? How are they calculated? It's something that bothers me. Very recently, I had to renew a policy, and I found that the rate that they charged me was extremely high. And I decided to tell the company I'm going to move my business. And suddenly, they brought down the rate from $12,000 to $7,300. How did they bring down a rate from $12,000 to $7,300? Because I simply said, I'm going to move my business. Yesterday, my daughter had to renew her insurance premium on her car. And they quoted her $9,300. And she said again, I'm not going to pay that. Justify to me how you're arriving at this and the value. And when she went to another insurance company, the insurance company gave her on the same amount of value a rate that was $2,000 less than what the other company was asking. How are these rates established? And I say this to alert consumers in the country that despite having all of this legislation, that you have to educate yourself and you have to exercise your consumer right. The right to say no and the right to ask, how are you developing this premium? Madam Speaker, the problem is in the fine print in the policies, which most consumers don't read. Most consumers don't read. And that is where they face the greatest discrimination and the greatest level of problems. You see, because it is in the fine print that you find the exceptions to the rule. And that is when consumers face the greater pains. Let me add, though, in all that I say, that we have very good companies in the insurance industry, people who live up to their claims. I am very happy to see in this legislation that in the schedule, there are provisions there for advertising standards. And that now, in the schedule, you will find that companies cannot just make promises, that there are certain standards of market conduct that the legislation now provides for. And I refer in particular to Schedule 11, Standards of Market Conduct. And I just want to refer to the general principle that states, insurers should ensure their sales and marketing material and procedures do not mislead consumers. Insurers should be legally responsible for all statements made in marketing and sales materials they produce related to their products. All marketing and sales materials should be easily readable and understandable by the general public. I urge consumers of insurance to read the standards of market conduct that are here. I can't go through the entire thing, but I am very impressed with the general principles here with respect to marketing material. And it doesn't stop there. Because what happens here also is that the insurance companies now also have to continue to inform their customers about what happens after they have bought the policy and whether the policy is performing or not performing. So this is a very strong piece of legislation, and I'm particularly impressed by the standards of market conduct that have been placed here in Section section 11 of the report. Madam Speaker, many companies are getting away in the insurance business because people just cannot afford litigation. And they choose to settle oftentimes to their disadvantage. That is very, very true, Madam Speaker. Very, very true. So they just go away. Madam Speaker, there are situations in this country where your car gets hit, gets hit, a new brand car. And you go to the insurance company, and what the insurance company then tells you, go by the guy who sells the second-hand parts. And you, therefore, have to accept second-hand parts rather than replace it with new parts from the company. That is the kind of unethical conduct that exists in the insurance industry. And because you want to get your car back on the road, because you don't have the ability to hire a lawyer and so on, you go and you take the second-hand parts and you go your way. That is wrong in this society. And that is why I support this legislation and support the strong measures also in this legislation. The consumer in this country must not be put at a disadvantage.
What about when I tell you have to pay this huge excess?
Yes, that's what I talk about in the fine print, the huge excess you have to pay. How do they decide on the depreciation? How do they decide? You have bought a new car. The generally accepted principle is 25% depreciation, but they depreciate it when something happens by a further 25% and you are losing. You are losing. These rogue elements in the insurance company, these are the ones who should pay the $500,000 fines and what have you. We should not spare them. We should not spare them. Somebody has to be the voice of protection for the consumers, and this Parliament is doing the right thing by this particular piece of legislation. Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, you see, one of the tragedies of this society is customers don't have their rights. And one of the things, excuse me, Madam Speaker, one of the things that is really offensive to me in this country is the quality of customer service in this country. Customer service is what is killing this country. Poor customer service. Whether it is in the hotels, whether it is in the quick shops, wherever, it is killing this country. Madam Speaker, countries can change if people want to change and if people have the right leadership. And I have seen in one particular country I visited recently, which was once called a third world country, India, where in a hotel in Delhi now, you get Ritz-Carlton type of service. And Madam Speaker, I'm telling you that not from just the experience I have. For 37 years of my life, I taught customer service and leadership development. And when I feel it, when I see it and I know it's good, I sense it. So, Madam Speaker, one of the tragedies is that customers don't know their rights. They do not understand the contracts into which they enter. And a policy with an insurance company is a contract, and they end up paying a high price for lack of knowledge and how this contract will be administered. And hopefully, this legislation, which is good legislation, and that's why we support it, good legislation, will strengthen the position of the consumers as much as it establishes the conditions under which the industry will operate. Madam Speaker, in this regard, one hopes that the relevant government agencies charged with public education, as well as the industry stakeholders, will begin to educate customers about this new law. That is something that is missing when we pass legislation, educating the public about the entitlements under the new legislation. The extent to which industry practices affect the population is best understood perhaps by recognizing, and it was said in this Parliament, that there are 1,037,000 vehicles in the country now. So that there are about 1,037,000 motor vehicle policies in the country. Well, I know there are a lot of them who don't even have insurance. But what I'm saying to you, if the law is being followed, it just tells you, Member for Diego Martin, how much income you are losing as a government by not having the people out there really collect and bring in those people who are not paying and driving their cars without insurance and what have you. And let me tell you, I say that not to make a point towards you, but to say that people without insurance here, when they hit somebody on the road and they take a life, everybody gets up and say, boy, you see, we should do something about people driving without insurance and so on. This is a lawless country. And not only in terms of the crime that's occurring, it's a lawless country in several other aspects. Institutions that are supposed to govern in the interests of citizens are not doing their work and they are failing. And not only must the leadership come from the top, the leadership must come also from the people who are placed in those institutions to lead. Fire them if they're not doing their jobs. We are not adopting performance management appraisals in this country as it should. In the whole public service, it takes you a year before an appraisal is done. We should be appraising people on a quarterly basis in this country. We should be giving them targets to meet, and they don't meet it. Do what is right. Be a good governor and govern in the interests of the taxpayers of this country. And therefore, that's the point I'm making here, is that insurance touches everybody. 300,000 plus houses in this country. Not all are insured, but at the same time, that's a big market for insurance, and they ought to be protected. Construction sites where workers are working. Look at Port of Spain. People are up on buildings and they don't even have a hard hat. They don't even have harnesses. And you have people, you're paying them thousands of dollars in an office and they're not even walking the streets to see what's happening. And insurance companies, you're supposed to have workmen's compensation there. Where are people doing their jobs in the public service in this country? We have to ask it. And this opposition is not afraid to ask those hard questions and to ask the government to apply the law as it should be applied in the interests of the country. Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker. The need, therefore, for regulations in this country cannot be overstated. Madam Speaker, the point is that many people are going to argue that some of the provisions in the law are draconian. Okay, so be it. But you would agree, Madam Speaker, that this is a country, unless there are consequences for deviancy, nothing will happen. Nothing will happen. Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, there have to be consequences for deviancy, you know. Madam Speaker, with your permission, I came to this Parliament and I argued a private motion for ADHD and children. Madam Speaker, I want to tell you that today, up to recently, there was a meeting of doctors in this country, in the public health system, and not one thing has been done to affect the position of ADHD children. And then there's not even the medication available, which costs about $600 a month for a child.
How passionate you are with respect to that particular topic. But please, could we come back to the matter at hand?
Thank you, Madam Speaker. But it's something that is really close to me, and I really... But that's what I was going to talk about. They are not covered, ADHD are not covered by medical insurance. They're not covered. And you depend on the public health system. But, Madam Speaker, the need for this legislation also comes against the background of what I consider to have been poor and negligent management by the central bank, and particularly those at the central bank entrusted with supervising financial institutions, including the insurance companies. I believe that this country has had its fair share of compromised supervision by the central bank, and particularly by the inspector in the central bank. Right? Madam Speaker, I'm not going to call names, but supervisor of insurance, the inspector of banks, and what have you, and financial institutions. And it will be worthwhile to go back to the Coleman report. The Coleman report, and this is an extract from the Trinidad Guardian, in which the Guardian reported here in its headline, Coleman report knocks central bank. In CLICO HCU fiasco, regulatory control seriously lacking. The powers of regulatory control of the insurance industry, says Mr. Coleman, by the central bank are found to be fundamentally deficient. Fundamentally deficient. And it says here, that deficiency was starkly shown up by the autocratic style of management of CLICO and the CLF group, generally by its business model, which was found to be seriously flawed and by the cavalier manner in which it treated attempts by the Inspector of Financial Institutions to deploy such limited regulatory control tools as were then available, and ignored to a large extent the recommendations of the management of Price, Waterhouse-Coopers, and so on. But, Madam Speaker, what Mr. Coleman said is very telling. And the central bank must not be absolved. And people who work in the central bank must take note that such a thing must not happen again in this country. Because, Madam Speaker, in this bill before the House, the duties and powers...
Honourable Member, I think this might be just a convenient time. It is now 4:30, and we'll take the suspension now. This House now stands suspended. We shall resume at 5 p.m.